Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. My name is Brother Omar El Rashid, and I'm the author, poet, and Peaceful Hearts Guide. And I've really been reflecting on everything that's been going on around the world, around the country, and everything else that's going on. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how when we are in a state of fear, of constant and perpetual fear, that is how a lot of the problems in the world happen. So there have been a lot of studies and research talking about the fact that when people are in a state of fear, even people who are generally hopeful and optimistic people and who are generally loving and kind people will actually support authoritarian and dictator type behavior. So when you're in a normal state of calmness, you might be loving and generous and kind. But when you feel fear, you tend to clamp up almost like a vice grip, and you get really, really conservative, you get really, really authoritarian, and you try in your political efforts, at least, to instill pain and suffering on other people. You become less loving and generous and kind when you're in a state of fear than you are when you're in a state of peace. And so a lot of us wonder, why is it that we live in a state of perpetual fear? There is so much going on around the world that makes us feel fearful of things even when there's nothing to be fearful of. And one of the things that I like to explain is that when it comes to feeling fear, fear is natural if there's a dangerous or, bad circumstance. But fear doesn't help us to actually solve problems. The place that we have to be in order to solve a problem is very different than the place that we have to be in to feel the fear. So when we go into life and we go forward and we have things that we need to do, fear doesn't help us to do it. It just makes things worse. What does help us to do things is active, calm, conscious planning. And I was thinking about an example. So on my Quran app, it brought me to Surah Yusuf. And in that chapter, of course, we know that Prophet Yusuf, he had a dream, or rather the king had a dream in which there were seven fat cows, and then being eaten by seven skinny cows, and then seven green or fresh grains of corn that were devoured by seven dry grains of corn. And Yusuf was able to interpret the dreams by the wisdom given to him by Allah, and that ability was something that helped him so that he was able to help those people to solve that calamity. But it wasn't fear of Yusuf, oh my God, there's going to be 7 years of famine, we're going to be distressed, we're going to be stressed out, this is terrible, we're all going to die. That's not what happened with Yusuf. What happened with Yusuf was Allah gave him the wisdom to understand what was the situation, and he very calmly came up with a plan that would help him to address those issues. So rather than being caught in the state of fear, rather than being stuck in this, oh my God, everything is falling apart, he calmly said, now that we know that there's going to be 7 years of prosperity, we're going to take certain actions in this time. And now that we know that there's going to be 7 years of suffering and famine, we're going to take another course of action. And alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, Nabi Yusuf was able to guide most of the people of Egypt into monotheism, into Tawheed, which is such a beautiful blessing for that prophet to have had. But how did it happen? It didn't happen because he was afraid. It didn't happen because the people were afraid. They knew what they had to do, and they took wise, conscious action. But again, when there's so much fear all around us, when we're plagued by these ideas, how can we actually incorporate feeling calm and peace and wisdom and a natural trust in Allah? How do we feel that in a daily life when there's so much fear around us? That's what I'm going to be talking about tonight in my webinar, how to feel like the happiest person on earth, even when we have great struggles and huge problems in life. The reality is, it's not a state of changing the circumstances of what we're dealing with, it's how we approach it. If we approach our problems with fear and worry and anxiety and all of these things, then we're going to be in a situation in which we get taken advantage of, and we have crisis after crisis, and we fall. There was a line in a poem that said, you're running away from your past. You're breaking your future, running away from your past. That's what happens when we're in a state of perpetual fear. But when we're in a state of peace and surrender and calm and trust and tawakkul on Allah, and when we take the necessary actions, which there are many Islamic prescriptions, but there are many other prescriptions that are necessary in order to feel that state of peace and tranquility. How do we do it? We do it by understanding and learning to trust and learning the peace and calm that we need. And so this is why I'm sharing tonight at Wednesday, March 11th, 2020 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, inshallah, this webinar. And the link is below. So if you'd like to RSVP and watch that webinar, I encourage you to sign up and basically find out how can we live in a state of peace even when there are problems around us. Because look, around the world, the government structures, the diseases, coronavirus, the Trump election, all of these things are making a lot of people very, very scared about what's going on. But we don't have to feel alone and away, because Allah is with us and He has given us the guidance to feel peace and tranquility even in difficult circumstances. Even we have the example of Prophet Muhammad, right? So he lost his children, his sons. There were a lot of difficulties that he faced. He lost his beloved wife Khadija. He lost Abu Talib. He lost many struggles and difficulties in his life, and yet he was able to be not only productive in the physical sense, but spiritually connected and hopeful. So again, these are all things that we can learn, and that's what I'm going to be covering tonight in the webinar. I hope that you RSVP at the link below. I hope to see you there, and I hope that you are able to experience peace. Because with all of this fear and propaganda and misinformation, it's easy to get consumed. But inshallah, we can restore ourselves to the peace. So again, share this with others if you feel they may benefit, and inshallah, I'll see you then. With that, I bid you adieu. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.